Hello, guys. Welcome to the newest episode of the Filinos podcast, episode number 98. I am coming to you after actually there's one more game playing still for week 22, but this is the week 22 episode of the Filinos podcast with me, your host Bonisile. I'm just got a few things to say before I get started, with the football. I've been kind of watching, as probably all creators do, been looking at where people are listening in from or watching from. And it seems, I'm working from the US at the moment and have been here for some time, but it's been really good to see people tuning in from a variety of countries, getting a lot of love from Germany, France, Ireland. Germany and Ireland have been riding with me for a while. I don't know what it is about those places. Maybe I have friends or people um, who maybe know me personally, but I have no clue. Like, definitely a lot of support from Germany and Ireland. But in recent weeks, I've started to see people from France, the Netherlands, and Singapore. So I just wanted to start with gratitude today and just say thank you to those of you who tune in. I am a smaller channel, smaller podcast, not celebrity, but I do, take quite a bit of time to look at games and whatnot to try and then share my views on what it is that we are all watching. And those of us who can't watch, you can tune into the pod and, get caught up on your fix of football, specifically Premier League. I dabble into Bundesliga, La Liga, and Serie A, but I don't create as much content from those leagues yet. I've just been consuming a little bit more, trying to really get familiar with them a bit better. So every once in a while, I might say some stuff about Bundesliga and Champions League too, because I watch a lot of Champions League. But anyway, thank you to those of you guys, who have been tuning in. I'm sure there may be some countries who don't rank in my top 5 that people are listening in from, and every listening and every support that you can bring in terms of like hyping, liking, sharing the content, it's very much appreciated. All right. So yeah, shout out to Germany, France, Ireland, and the Netherlands. The US is still obviously my biggest market in terms of support base because I'm assuming the algorithm probably pushes things to places that I'm close to, and I'm in the US. So with that said, I want to start this weekend's round of Premier League fixtures by really talking, I guess, not talking, but shouting them out. Manchester United. Manchester United has stayed in the Benta era for a long time, and they're still in it. Let's not get it twisted. But I really, it's crazy actually. Before I get into the game, I was talking, a lot of my friends are Manchester United supporters. A lot of them, too many to be honest. But it's quite nice to have that many Manchester United friends at the moment because they've been stinking it up for quite a while. And so I've had a good laugh with a lot of them. And I was having some drinks with a few of them on Friday night, actually. And yeah, it was like 4 Manchester United fans, 1 Liverpool fan, and me, the Arsenal fan, and a whole bunch of us African expats, get together and, just chatting, chopping it up. And none of them expected anything from this game. And rightfully, based on what you've seen from United under Amorim and Pep under, City under Pep. So, a lot of people, I think it was delusion on my side to think that they were going to do anything, but they did do something. And so, hello. Thank you for joining. Please stay, chime in if you have questions and things. But yeah, so Manchester United, they've definitely surprised all of their supporters. But I'd been saying to these 4 guys I was hanging out with, with the Liverpool fan as well, I was like, United have a habit of turning up for big games. And they did this at Liverpool. They did this in the very first game of the season against Arsenal. That was a home game, but like they gave Arsenal the business. It was to this day, I think that game was still the hardest game Arsenal played away or at home this season. And that was against Manchester United. It was a 1-0 win. Ricardo Calafiore had from a set piece. But in this game, don't get it twisted, City was City, like in terms of possession, but they hardly troubled Manchester United goal. Like they didn't have a shot on target since like basically in the first half when they had a header from that kid, Alain. The entire second half, there were no shots on goal from Manchester City, like on target. Manchester United were all the biggest highlights in this game. City had about close to 70% of the ball, but United had all the big chances, hitting the post, Ahmad hitting the post at the beginning with Harry Maguire, and all the things that they did that, surprised, I think, everyone. But I will say this, because like I'd be remiss, I got the result that I wanted from that game. But I also will say Manchester United were lucky to not be playing with 10 men from the 10th minute. Diogo Dalot's challenge on Doku was bad. I've seen Bruno sent for things less dangerous than that. I've seen other players sent off for things less dangerous than what Dalot did. That was a very dangerous tackle, and I'm glad Jeremy Doku was able to get out of it okay. I don't think he meant to do this, Dalot. I don't think he's a malicious kid. I don't think any of these kids are, but in this game. However, that was a bad tackle. But I'm glad in a way that the game stayed 11v11, because it's too many times players get sent off early in the game and the game is done. And of course, if you City, you want to see the guy, sent off, and you can have an advantage, whatever. But for the spectacle, I don't support either team. I'm an Arsenal fan. It was a great game because there were 11 players on the field, even though they should not have been after 10 minutes. Now, I want to say Michael Carrick did a good job of just, I think, releasing the players on the ball, but also making them to be prepared to play without the ball. So it was basically it looked like a 4-2-3-1 to me, but 4-4-2 maybe off the ball with Bruno and Belmo in front of a midfield four of Dogu left, Mainu and Casemiro in the middle in the 2 sixes, and then you had Ahmad on the right. That kid is something special. And then back four, 2 center backs, very experienced, of Maguire and Lisandro Martinez. And then left back, Luke Shaw, right back, Diogo Dalot. It was a very balanced, team, lots of energy in the wings, because those 2 young kids, Ahmad and Dogo, are very, very good going both ways. So that means there was extra protection for the slower midfield players, and there was protection for the fullbacks. And what I liked about United's play, when they did have the ball, they hardly had any of it, probably close to 30%, I think, when I looked. But they had 6 big chances to Manchester United's 0. They hit the post, I remember, 2 times. Maguire, I think, 2nd or 3rd minute, and then Ahmad late in the game hits a post too. There were a couple of chances for Dogu and Belmo that was saved by Donnarumma. Donnarumma had a lot more to do in this game than Lamens. I don't know how we say that Belgian kid's name in the Manchester United goal's name. But that kid had hardly anything to do, and 0 shots on target in the second half for City. So this wasn't, Manchester United outplaying Manchester City like off the park, like most home teams would do when, you consider them dominance. But this was a dominant game of a different kind. Manchester United's physicality, it showed like that United had a week to prepare for this game, while Manchester City had to go in the middle of the week to go play at Newcastle in an away leg in the Carabao Cup and whatnot, and you could see United physically were just on it. They were playing on the edge a little bit. Mainu clipped a few ankles here and there. They had to get away with a few things on the day, but you could see that these guys were up for this. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the Manchester United old boys, Rio Ferdinand, maybe even Alex Ferguson, were in the dressing room to talk to the boys a little bit and like to support Michael Carrick. Michael Carrick is a good coach, especially when you see now the Premier League having, younger coaches. I think he'd be able to spar against many of these other coaches like Leon Rosenia and Keith Andrews and those kinds of guys. Michael Carrick will feel like he can do a job with, especially with the talent that he also has at Manchester United. Manchester United has been recruiting expensive players, but like maybe not using them very well because some of them are being recruited by different managers. But in this game, they were able to find a way to play together, and they were very compact, and they didn't press high all the time. But what they did do is, as soon as the ball got beyond a certain threshold, something triggered, and they were pounce. And Belmo, Ahmad deserve special mention in this game. Definitely deserve special mention in this game. And I also want to say that kid Patrick Dorgu, his selection in front of Luke Shaw was a good touch by Michael Carrick, because that kid is a left back or left wing back by trade, but he knows his way around the box. He knows his way around the attacking third. And sometimes when Luke Shaw would overlap or go forward, and the kid would kind of sit in a little bit, and sometimes he would join and make a midfield three off the ball, while Bruno and Ahmad and Belmo would be the front line in the resistance or in the press. So it was very good to see Manchester United looking like Manchester United. It was a one-off, but it was a very impressive one-off performance. Mainu looked like he'd been playing for weeks on. He didn't look out of pace, or didn't look like he missed a step. He played next to a very experienced campaigner in Casemiro. Bruno looked at home in his normal position. This is something that I was surprised, actually, that the previous coach was refusing to do, to be honest. Bruno and Casemiro double pivot was always a bad idea, regardless whether you were winning some games or not. It was always a bad idea. And that's why I thought Manchester United actually needed a midfielder to sit there, because they were not using Mainu. I thought they needed a midfielder signing more than a goalkeeper signing. Good thing that they signed a goalkeeper, and at the price that they did. It looks like the kid is a decent goalkeeper. But you fix that midfield. Manchester United has a lot of pieces around that. I don't know, what Michael Carrick could have done that was vastly different, besides just maybe just give the kids a bit of belief, and just allow them to express themselves, and give them a tight structure defensively, and say, we're going to be extremely direct when we have the ball. That's what it looks like to me anyway. Of course, you got some players who can play on the ball, who know how to handle the ball. Lisandro Martinez had some really good passes, long passes and short, very competitive, he's a mentality guy. Martinez in the back. And when you have him and Maguire, there's an error there, but they want to give you a solid foundation to build from, better than Euro and Aiden Heaven at this stage of their careers, right? These are teenage boys playing center back. So it might be a little bit of luck for Carrick that, something like, Maguire was available this weekend, and you could, if you protect Maguire, he's good in that situation. It's only when the game is wide open when Maguire then will start struggling. So I'm very impressed with their energy, their endeavor. They played really well in this game. City were lucky to go into half-time level. And right here, Ahmad was slightly offside when he scored just before that. City were loose on the ball and were almost punished by Bruno and Belmo. So there were some moments of good high pressure from United, and this is one where, City almost conceded a goal, but they were able to bail themselves out of the problem they created for themselves. Good diagonals from Bruno, and the diagonals were a theme throughout the game, like cross-field diagonals to stretch Man City, because I don't think Manchester City has a lot of willing runners when the ball is not in their possession. I think Man City do well in a compact game, and I think when you stretch them with willing runners in Dorgu and Ahmad, and they're not afraid to kick and chase, so you have a formula there to build from. It's a little bit basic, but sometimes when you struggle as much as Man United have, going back to the basics is exactly what you need to do. So, couple of good attempts for Manchester City, but nothing basically after the 40th minute that I can remember. And when I look at the data, I don't see much else. Like I said, the last goal shot on target was that kid, Alain, centre back. And Erling Haaland was not a factor in this game, because Manchester United were very good at congesting that middle part of the field. And fair play to United. Fair play to United. I'm very, very impressed with, their endeavor. And all the things here that I wrote down are Manchester United goalmouth action things. Donnarumma, again, the first hour has more to do than Lamed, is what I write. And I write again here, Donnarumma 63rd minute save from, Belmo shot, and then minutes after, Belmo scored. So within 2 minutes, Belmo has a shot that's saved by Donnarumma, and then Belmo scores. And then Dogu scores in another 10 or so minutes. Ahmad, 91st minute, a very tight offside to rule out a Bruno goal, and then another tight offside to rule out a Mason Mount goal. All this goalmouth action is Manchester United. Manchester United will be very, very encouraged by what they did against Manchester City. And the next game that they have is against another team that plays in a very City-like structure. We like a game, Arsenal, right? That's their next game. And Arsenal have a Champions League game between their 0-0 draw at Nottingham Forest and their game against Man United at the weekend. So United, again, are going to have a full week to prepare for an opponent that likes to have the ball. They're going to go away from home. And yeah, Arsenal better not let them score the first goal, basically. Because if they score the first goal with that counter-attacking power that they have in this team, they can spoil a party, United. And I think if they lean into this counter-attacking approach, they will, like I've been saying this the whole time, that United, I favored them to get one of those top 5 positions, even with Amorim, because I believed in the talent they had. I also was worried about Amorim's unwillingness, though, to be adaptable, to do different things with the players he had at his disposal. I think this is a very expensively assembled Manchester United squad. And I think a willing coach, to look at what is it that my players do well versus like, what is it that I do and you need to fit into it, but more the other way around. I think with United, because this team has been built by various coaches and technical directors and all that stuff, I think for a while, a coach is going to need to be very pragmatic and be very player first in his approach. And then look at which of these players you have here that you like, that you can keep. Because a lot of them are talented players. Like look at Garnacho, who they let go, or Rashford that they let go. They developed Rashford. Like, Garnacho's doing well at Chelsea. He's doing okay. He's getting minutes at Barcelona. He's doing okay. Rashford is there. Jadon Sancho, they've bought players, but never with the same manager long enough, and that's part of their problem, United. But this weekend belongs to them. I have to give that to them. Like this weekend belongs to them, and let's see if they can sustain this. But fair play to them, no issues here. The next game I'm going to talk about is Arsenal away at Nottingham Forest. A very frustrating 0-0 draw. This one for Arsenal fans. And I wasn't happy, obviously, with it. And I think a lot of Arsenal fans obviously weren't. And I've listened to so many. And yeah, a lot of them are just not having Mikel Arteta sometimes, with these 0-0s and his and his approach that appears to be mitigation first. Like, let me minimize or, where possible, eliminate risk in terms of jeopardy against us. Like, let's not concede anything. Because as long as we 0-0, like, we have a better chance of going the other way and getting one. Whether it's a set play or, a beautiful open play or an error from a defensive player, which all of these things happen, by the way. We created from open play. We created from set pieces. And on a different day, this is a 1-0 game, from the chances that Arsenal created. They didn't create, and I think they would have expected not to create, an exponential amount of chances. It's a Sean Dyche team, very well set up in their 4-4-2 block, willing runners. Big boys are in town. They had conceded 3 against Wrexham the week before. So there was a lot of pride at stake. I'm going to start there. I'm going to contextualize. But there are some things that I didn't like that I saw, which I've spoken about, a lot of which revolve around the front players. Arsenal are always going to get the best punch from everybody, especially now that they are, perennial top 2, whatever team. You're going to get everybody's best punch. So you expect that. Okay. And they played this game, like they were expecting Nottingham Forest's best punch. So they did well. I don't think it was a lack of effort. I really don't. And I'm also going to say this before going into kind of like some of the things that I didn't like and whatnot. I'm also going to say that Mikel Arteta is he has a very difficult job because we all like to talk about this and that and the third. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say he should have done a different kind of rotation. I've been crying for him to use his squad. I think still he could use some rotation in midfield. He's doing it up front. It's almost every second game. There's a different, in the last 3 or 4 games, there's a game for a different winger every other game, it seems, right? And I like that, and maybe Gyökeres should not have started the Chelsea or this game, one of these games, because I've been wanting Gyökeres also to get more breaks, from being honest. I know he had an assist and a goal at Chelsea, but in this game, he put up another 5 out of 10 performance, maybe 4, if you want to, drop him even further down for not scoring the chance where Murillo basically gives him an opportunity to have a run. And he had a run on the defender, and he had a run to at least try to get him make the goalkeeper work. He kicked it into a defender who was sliding to block. I don't know what else this team can do at this point besides give this guy cameos and try to build him up that way. I really don't know, like, if we are going to learn fast enough to play with him while he's learning on the job, like from starting fresh, you know what I mean? From defenders starting fresh with him. I think he needs to be coming on 60 minutes, 70 minutes every game until maybe, March. I think he needs to go through a spell, in my view, of like what Eze has been doing since Christmas time, since that Palace game before Christmas Day in the cup. And now Eze is starting to kind of appear again. That's 12 minutes here, 12 minutes there. And hopefully he starts tomorrow at Inter. But in this game, Raya I heard people being critical over Raya because of that missed tackle that he remedied himself. I think his long balls didn't work out very well. I think he completed 1 out of 9, which is like 11% or something like that. Outside of that, David Raya did a good job claiming, keeping things tidy. Didn't have a lot of saving to do, but he did save us. That one time Callum Hudson-Odoi was played through. That was a big moment. It's still 0-0 at the time. And Forest, in the form that they were defending in, if they score that opportunity, it's something else. So this is the thing I think sometimes as fans, we don't give David Raya enough credit for. Like we think just because he hasn't made spectacular saves, it seems to me anyway that people think because he hasn't made a spectacular shot-stopping save or whatever it was, he makes some days. But when that doesn't happen, it seems like we miss some of the really good things he does to set the team up for success. And I don't think that way, personally. I think David Raya had an okay game. I think he was one of our better performers on the day. Ben White had a good game, played a couple of really good crosses. I think Declan Rice should have done better with one. I think Arsenal in that first 30 to 35 minutes should have won this game then, because after that, like, Nottingham Forest started to feel a bit more comfortable with what we were doing, and they started to find their own rhythm too. I think here, right, Ben White, good going forward. Tinelli miss, that was in the first 10 minutes. A deflected shot, a Dueke shot that falls beautifully for him. He should not be missing from there. He missed the target. He missed the entire goal. I know it hits the back of his left foot, like hits it. He hits the ball with his heel, but Gabriel Martinelli should be doing better there. I don't care that it's in the 28th minute, because if you don't score in the 28th minute, guess what? Their game plan is to stop you from scoring, and if you don't score, you're helping them, and they find their confidence, and then you're putting more pressure on your team. Declan Rice scuffs his volley, kicks it in. I think he kind of shins it into the floor, and then it bounces, and Sells makes a decent save. Zubimendi plays a nice little cross that's played a bit too hard. I don't know if he's trying to shoot or cross, but like that's another incident where, with a bit more calmness, whether Zubimendi, because I'll call it a cross come shot, because I don't know if he means to cross or he means to shoot, but he hits it into an area, but it's a bit too hard. Odegaard, Rice, and Zubimendi, I wrote here, like they were having a tough day on the game. Like all three of them, they were having a tough day. And Forest were men marking our midfielders. And you know what? Fair play to them. And this is the issue that I kind of like will put on Arteta a bit with the not rotating in the midfield. When you know you want to play against a low block, why do you keep rolling the same 3 midfielders every 3 days? I don't think that's fair. And that's why I kind of feel for the players here. I feel for the players because I think Mikel could have done a bit more to help his team here. I think I wrote in my group chat with my other Arsenal fans that this is an opportunity to rest one of Rice or Zubimendi before the game was played. So this is not even 2020. I was like, this is an opportunity to play Eze instead of Zubimendi or Rice before I even saw the game play out. And this would have been one good opportunity to do that. And then if Odegaard is struggling, you can replace him with Marino. And I think he should have probably not started. The hindsight is he probably should not have started Gyökeres. I think maybe you play Marino there and then you play Ethan. You have to, you can't play the same midfield guys every 3 days. Like, these teams are physical, and you're playing against teams who have a whole week to rest. These guys played at Chelsea in a cup game, which many Arsenal fans were finding questionable, that we went that strong. But people were able to say, okay, you know what, we're going to rationalize this as this is an important cup tournament. It's a semi-final. You want to make sure that, you know, you take care of business, and then you can rotate later. Problem is, when it doesn't work out and you walk out of there with only a slender 1-goal lead, that means you've been running for 90 minutes. And then you have to go away. You know, this was the third away game straight, and they're going to Italy today to play tomorrow against Inter Milan. So I do understand that Arteta wants to take the approach of the most important game is the one we're playing next, or the one we're playing today, if it's game day. However, you can't ask as much as you're asking from Rice and Zubimendi, because what's going to end up happening, and I hope this doesn't happen, by the way, I really hope like none of these players get injured, but you start overusing these players, and then you're going to have to dig deep and find somebody who has hardly played, and you're going to ask them to do a Kivio kind of situation, come in and play 10 games on the spin. Now I trust you. Like, you can't do that to football players. I like what he's been doing with some of these other guys, like in the front. He's been good about rotating his front players. He's been good about moving Saka. And in this game, in the 57th minute, Odegaard gets yanked because he was having a bad game. I don't know if that's physical or whatever, but he was not having a good game, Martin Odegaard. Gyökeres, 57th minute, comes off too. It was a triple sub. And Noni Madueke, who I think of the 3 guys who got pulled, he should not have been pulled. In fact, I think Gyökeres should have been pulled at halftime, and Martinelli should have had more minutes in the second half because he has more minutes in his legs, and I think he was having a better game than Gyökeres. And so, like, yes, the rotation is happening in the front positions, but I'm just hoping that we start to see more, especially with these low block games, more Rice sitting in or Zubimendi sitting in, so that we can spare those guys too, because we don't have much behind Rice and Zubimendi. We have other people who can do the Odegaard thing, but we don't have other people who can approximate, even be like in the same neighborhood as, what's his name, Rice and Zubimendi. We don't have other people who can give us a good imitation of what those guys do. So be smart. I know players can get hurt in any kind of way, but you can't be asking them to do as much as you're asking them right now. I'm sorry. You know, but that equalizes the game. It makes it equal, and makes it like, as much as we have a good squad, our squad is good when you use the squad. And I'm going to leave it there. So that's the one part of it, the manager, that is like, you have to commit to this rotating thing. You can't half-ass it, because even during the Christmas period, we rolled out the same back 7 players plus Raya, and we rotated in the front positions. And then guess what happened? 0-0 against Liverpool. We didn't have the legs. We don't have the legs, because then they play again, and then they play again. Anyway, let me stop there, because I'm going to start getting whiny. But I just think we have to find solutions in that midfield where we don't roll out the same 3 all the time. But yeah, so up until 35 minutes, Arsenal had several chances that were massive to win the game. And then 35 minutes until like 60 minutes-ish, I think Forest started to feel themselves in the game. They started to really do okay. And like, you know, we were not doing much until that triple sub that we made. Then Saka starts doing things as well. Then we start getting momentum again. And so the players were trying. And that's why I don't agree with some of the Arsenal creators I listen to. Where's the effort? Where's the, we have a chance to go 9 points. Like, some people are saying they didn't see the wanted gene or the killer gene. And I think the wanted was there. I think the boys wanted the game, but they were just not composed enough in the big moments. And there were not many, but they were there. There were moments there to take this game. I think fouling Cho right on the edge of the box was one of those very few times Nottingham Forest got close to doing anything. Bucharest, after that, like 41 minutes, he has a straight opportunity to go and do something and give us a lead. He failed. Um, and so, yeah, half time for me, I genuinely thought Gyökeres should be the one leaving the game and not Martinelli. And I just want to say as well, fair play to Nottingham Forest, because this was a 0-0 game last year. Different manager, but it was a 0-0 game last year. And they didn't have a shot on target. So Arsenal defensively, we have no question. Like, we have some killers in the defense. 2 games without scoring, I think, or 2 0-0 draws in 14 years. So, it's a bit of bad history, but like, I don't walk out of this one feeling as bad as I did after the Liverpool game. And even in the Liverpool game, like, there were conditions that made it sensible why the game was slow and it was ugly and whatever. In this game, we actually played okay. I think we did enough to win. We really did. Mikel Merino could have scored that header on a different day. Declan Rice scores that volley on a different day. Martinelli scores that goal on a different day. Gyökeres scores that one-on-one that he takes too long to shoot and then it gets blocked situation. He scores that on a different day. And I might be forgetting something else. The header from Saka, right? That was a good header by Bukayo. I don't think there's anything wrong with the way he did it, because the ball didn't come with a lot of pace, and so it was going to be kind of a looping header. Great save by Sales. On a different day, the penalty is given. So I've counted 6 instances where, on a different day, one of them goes in. I can't think of too many chances that Nottingham Forest fashioned. So they defended well. The margins were not that big. So it was a 0-0. You take it, you walk away. And with Manchester City losing early in the day, I think this felt a bit more sore than maybe it needed to. Or Brighton did Brighton equalize? Yep, they equalized in the 91st minute. Woo! Yeah, Bournemouth are gonna kick themselves in the heel. They've been leading for most of this game. Now it's 1-1, but 7 more minutes of injury time or extra time to play. So I think this is one of the reasons I try to avoid recording my feelings about the game, because after the game, I really felt more upset about what I'd watched. I've just rewatched it again today because I like pain, I guess. And they looked decent. The boys looked like they were trying. It just was not good enough on the day. And you have to just, take the 7-point lead and move on to the next game. And then the next game is Villa losing to Everton at home. No one saw that coming. And this is a thing about the Premier League too, is that I think a lot of times people expect the team at the top to just go away and take the points. But it's hard to get an away win in the Premier League. It's hard to get a home win in the Premier League. But away is even harder. Everton, without Idrissa Gana Gueye, because he was still engaged in AFCON, and Eline Diaye, they went away to Villa Park, a fortress where Villa had won, I think, 11 straight, including wins against Arsenal and Citeh. And they've beaten everyone who's come to town. I mean, that they've just been cleaning up there, like perfection. And I think the football is catching up to them. And then they sell Daniel Malen, and the European football is coming. And John McGinn has a knee injury. We don't know how long that's going to be. And then they lose to, a decent Everton side. But they, Villa, everyone would have expected Villa to win this game. And then we would be hearing talks about, yeah, you see, you've been worried about Manchester City. Don Unai is, best coach after Pep. Yeah, I think Unai is a great coach. I'm not going to try to take the piss out of him. But his comments after the game are showing a very frustrated figure. I think he wants more support. But I think PSR has been an issue for Villa for some time. I think they did try to microwave the building of this squad for him. And they've done a good job. Like, I think, for example, their best player was nowhere near as expensive as some of the other players that have gone around the Premier League of the similar quality. And there aren't many with Morgan Rogers' quality. Emi Buendia was a smart buy, but injury kept him, out of the squad for too long, or out of the playing squad for too long. Now John McGinn is down. Champions League is back. I think Don Unai is not happy, and it's understandable. But I think if I'm being fair, which I'd like to think that I am, he's overachieved in the Premier League this season, because I wasn't feeling too hot on this squad to begin with. He's done a good job, and he's been using mostly the same guys, you know. But he's smart, right? This is the thing, like I was saying, Arteta sometimes doesn't do. Knight has a way of keeping players involved. He's prepared to make changes. And Arteta did make changes in this last game, so I don't want to go too long in that. He made them in the 57th minute. He made one at halftime. Used all 5 substitutions by the 80th minute. It's just, you just take the draw and you keep it. But Aston Villa, losing to Everton would not have been a bet anyone would have made who's not an Everton supporter. But it happened. And another surprising result happened in North London, where I think a certain Thomas Frank is in trouble. Thomas Frank and the Tottenham Hotspur fans are just not jiving. I've been an advocate, or at least a believer in Thomas Frank. I respect the coaching job he's done at Brentford still, even though Keith Andrews has inherited that team, lost players and gotten them better than what Frank was doing. So, one may feel like maybe Frank was a beneficiary of the structure at Brentford and not so much maybe as good of a coach as he appeared. I'm not there yet. I do think this Tottenham squad is very limited, especially in the creative player department. I think he's got a lot of very willing runners. Getting a lot of goals from Van der Ven and Romero this season. They're a bit all over the place, Tottenham. They are a very, very, very poor man's Arsenal in that. And I'll be the first to admit this. I don't always enjoy watching Arsenal. And I think when results change, I think this is why, for example, I don't think Thomas Frank and Mikel Arteta are on the same level of coach, okay? But if I can just talk about my experience as an Arsenal fan when I watch my team under Arteta, okay? There are games where I'm like, this is too rigid. But then we win, and we don't concede goals. And, 1-0 and this and that, we're robust. So you can find positive language when the results are right to fit the result, right? Like Arsenal, they're so dominant and they this and they control the game, they suffocate. But when you go and do the 0-0 against Liverpool and then the 0-0 against Nottingham Forest away, then you are left feeling even more upset because you're not even able to enjoy the wins properly, really, because it always feels like you've left something on the table. And I think there may be something to that effect with the Tottenham Hotspur fans, because like the Ange thing was definitely not working. It was fun, but at some point it was not fun for them even. It was fun for the rest of us, right? Watching supporters. So Thomas Frank and his marriage with Tottenham looks to be in tatters, right? And I think David Ornstein has been writing and speaking about, it's a matter of when and not a matter of if he's going to get sacked. So if you're Thomas Frank, like, you have to go away and win in the Champions League this week and try to win 4 out of the next 5 or 6 games. You have to start getting results. I just don't know, though, like with Tottenham's lack of consistency, if they're going to be able to do that, because they haven't been consistent. They haven't been consistent at all. Let me see their next few games, because they're in trouble. They're sitting 14th. Yep. So they're going to Borussia Dortmund tomorrow, away to Burnley on the weekend, away to Frankfurt, Champions League the following week, home to Manchester City. Just draw that one, don't lose it. I mean, they normally win against City, and then they're away to Manchester United and away to Newcastle, and then the next game after that is Arsenal. At this point, I'd be surprised if he's still the manager by the time Arsenal visit North London, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I'd be very surprised. But I like the guy, as much as he's obviously a coach for a team that I don't basically care for too much. I do think he's a good dude, but this is not about being a good dude or not. This is about results, and they're not happening for him, unfortunately. So, yeah, let's see. Let's see if he gets to the Arsenal game. At least that should be his goal at this point. Be the coach at the end of February. Chelsea 2, Brentford 0. This was a weird game. I think Brentford could have won this game, but it was Chelsea who was able to put their chances away. And yeah, great goal from João Pedro and a penalty from Cole Palmer. Not a whole lot to talk about here. And Chelsea get to keep a clean sheet because Brentford were not very good in front of goal on this day, which is unlike them this season. They tend to score at least one, especially late, and they couldn't find the net on this day. And Chelsea kept a clean sheet for the first time in 8, and Liam Rosenia seems to be ticking along. And 3 games in, 2 wins, and a very narrow loss to Arsenal, which should have been bigger. But he's going to be feeling himself, and he's going to be feeling that he has the tools to even turn that around away at the Emirates if he get some of his better players back for that game away at the Emirates. But Chelsea 2-0 winners at home to Brentford, and they keep their hopes alive for those Champions League spots. I don't think at the moment they're looking to win the Premier League. I know that would be a bit too crazy. I think them and Man United are going to be just like looking to create some distance between themselves and the other teams with European ambitions, and that's going to be that. And then next game is Liverpool 1, Burnley 1. Shocking result, this one. Like I didn't see it coming. I had counted Liverpool for 3 points on this one. And Szoboszlai has a chance to score from a penalty spot. He does a crossbar challenge with it, hits it so hard that crossbar was still shaking at full time. And the score is opened by Florian Wirtz. Good shot. Hard, hit into the roof, found by Curtis Jones. It's back. He kind of like hits it back from the byline, and Wirtz had good moments in this game. He's having better season than I think his GA numbers are showing. And he's starting to definitely assume his role as the heartbeat of this team in the attacking third. Him and Ekitike are definitely the new attacking leaders in this team. Yes, Szoboszlai is going to be Szoboszlai, ever reliable. He was unfortunate to miss the penalty. Was a hard hit penalty. Keeper would have not saved it even if he was just standing still. But Liverpool draw at home to Burnley, which makes them gives them an actually interestingly weird record that they have not beaten any of the newly promoted side at Anfield this year. They've played Leeds already. That was a draw. And they drew against Burnley now. And they drew against Sunderland. Like, they haven't beaten any of the newly promoted sides at Anfield. That's a weird bit of history. Just like the Arsenal 2-0 draws for the first time in 14 years. I don't know when the last time that happened with Liverpool, though, where they didn't beat a single team that was newly promoted at home. But yeah, I don't know what's going on there in terms of them not being able to see it over the line in some of these games. That's like 4 or 5 draws in a row now for Liverpool. Like, that's too many in a row. Arsenal, you think it's a crisis at Arsenal right now. They've just drawn 2 of their last 2. But, and United is coming into town, so like better not lose that one. That's the thing with Premier League winning seasons. You can have bad results, but they can't be consecutive. The next game, Palace away to Sunderland. Sunderland 2-1 winners in this one. And Sunderland just keeping their romantic season going here. GLASNER was probably the biggest story over here, besides Sunderland winning again, keeping their unbeaten home run. I think it's still alive. Crystal Palace took the lead through Pino. Good finish, kind of like lobbed it over with the outside of his foot, and it's a very hard chance to finish, and he took it very nicely. But Enzo Lafay replied very quickly for Sunderland and made it 1-1. And then Brian Brobby scored a very impressive goal, which was deserving of being a winner. And biggest story here is GLASNER basically calling out his board and executives about, selling Mark Gay the day before the game. He says, like, 2 times in a season, you never see that with any other club, but it's happening with us. We sold Eze a day before the game, and now we're selling our captain a day before the game. he used the word abandonment. He said we are feeling abandoned. Him speaking about him and the players. He said, he wouldn't abandon the players. They deserve the best of Oliver Glasner until the end of the season. But basically, he just came out and announced, the day before actually that yeah, I'm out. And you know what? Fair play to him. I know he's getting criticism for speaking in public about this, but clubs do this. They do this, and and it's not right. Like Glasner has earned their respect from this team, and they keep selling his best players. He's lost Olise, he's lost Eze, and these are just the three big ones, and now Gay, and I can't remember some of the other ones. And they are probably going to sell Adam Wharton. So I think I can't be critical of him for speaking his truth. And maybe he's asking to be sacked Ruben Amorim style or Enzo Maresca style. These guys are not dumb. You're setting them up for failure. Like, what do you want them to do? You sell their best players and then you're acting like they're the ones who are crazy. Nah, bro, that's just not on. Kind of makes me think about the AFCON final, actually, but I won't get into that right now. Yeah, abandonment. That was the big story there. Leeds win 1-0 against Fulham. And I must say, I'm very happy for Leeds. Like, I'm very partial to Leeds as well, of course, because they were the first English team, like in the early 90s, that bought South African talent, in Phil Masinga and Lucas Radebe. And so because of that, I had a soft spot for Leeds. Like, I'm not a Leeds fan or anything like that, but I was always rooting for them to not lose. Only time that I wanted Leeds to lose back in those early 2000s, especially when Lucas Radebe became the captain, was when they were playing against Arsenal. But other than that, like Harry Kewell, Alan Smith, what's his name? I think Lee Bowyer played in that team. A young Rio Ferdinand also kind of played in that team for a little bit. Like, I always liked Leeds, and so because of that South African connection with Lucas Radebe. And in crazy story, there's a band from Leeds called the Kaiser Chiefs. And that's because Lucas Radebe used to play in South Africa for my favorite team there, the Kaiser Chiefs. And they called him the Chief. So, it's a little bit of a South African nugget there. So it's long removed of a connection to Leeds, but I'm happy for them. I'm happy that they have found, with the coach that brought them up, they've found a formula that's working for them now. And, they only lost one of their last, I think, 6 or 7 games. And that was a 4-3 heartbreaker away at Newcastle. Besides that, like, they've been really, really good. And, too many draws, but they've won as well. Like, they won now, and now let me see where they sit in the table. Like, that should be very helpful for them. I mean, they still sitting 16th, but they're on 25 points. Nottingham Forest on 23. So they're 8 points away from the relegation. That's impressive for them, newly promoted side. And you have Wolves and West Ham there who look to be in big trouble, even though West Ham helped themselves by winning away at Spurs after losing 3 of their last 4 games before this one and only drawing 1. And Nuno is another one who I don't know what's going to happen there. It looks like they're giving him players. Hopefully they stick with him, because it would be stupid to let him go at this stage. I think you're not going to find a coach better than Nuno to keep you up, really, if you're West Ham. So stick with him and let him take you to the end of the season and work it out with him then. But anyway, that's the end of this episode of the Full Nose podcast. Like I said, thank you for supporting. And yeah, please like, hype, subscribe, all the beautiful things that podcasters like to ask people to do. But I'll be talking to you on the next one. Cheers, my friends.